This
Take it.
conference will now be recorded.
Please, I'm out of practice here.
All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. And Cynthia, can you tell us if there's any public comments submitted?
No, we didn't receive any public comment.
Perfect. Okay, and we will move on to the approval of the minutes for June 2nd and June 14th. Everybody should have received those in the packet. I'll give folks a minute if they need it to take a breeze through those, and then I'm happy to take a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from June 2nd and June 14th.
Sounds good. Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mario with a second. Any comment? Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Fantastic. Okay, we are now going to hear from Sean, and he is going to give us an update on the strategic plan. It's all yours, Sean.
Thank you, Kyle, and I will say thank you, Mr. President. Welcome. Brief update, somewhat brief. So a little bit of background. Those of you that are on the governance committee already understand this, so pardon the repetition. But the consultants were about to wrap up the first phase of their engagement and really taking stock of who we are and market trends and different principles and influences on our development. The student work that Prabhas did, they were really just taking an inventory of things based upon what they've seen and heard and comparing it to what they would normally expect, and even comparing it to other parts of the region. As part of that effort, they had some stakeholder engagement, like what they did at the board meeting. But a few of us flagged a concern that it wasn't going to be enough in the end, that it might actually run the risk of someone being critical about the process, that we didn't take a time out to really engage as many as maybe we could have. So a question I'm bringing to this meeting is and a little bit of trust in me and those of us that felt that way, is that we have an opportunity here in this little timeout. You know, they had originally planned on giving a presentation at this meeting, and so that's the timeout we're in now. We told them, pump the brakes. We have this concern. I personally wanted to see the presentation before it came to the board to be able to provide some of my own comments, and we just did that over the course of a 2-hour call today with Cynthia and Kathleen and the consultants. And they got a lot of great feedback from us that they hadn't gotten yet. And in terms of the engagement, they totally agreed that it was actually probably a good time to do it, and something they said that they had suggested early on, I guess. So in order to avoid an additional service and additional expense, we floated the idea of inviting the public to that presentation. In other words, turning the board presentation into a public presentation, or maybe even a public meeting. And we've got to talk with the town attorney to see if there is a difference between the two and the nuances of that in terms of logistics, and how if the consultants can use their Zoom platform since they have a license for up to 400 attendees, things like that. But the question I'm bringing to the board is, would you be okay with the public, if we really amp up the publicity of this presentation to get as much viewing of it and input about it over the course of the next, what would be, I guess, a month and a half. So we're thinking about the October 2nd board meeting, and whether it's actually part of the board meeting or a separate presentation, we're just looking for some some approval or comment on whether you think it's a good approach to kind of kill two birds with one stone, so to say. Cynthia, I welcome your comments if I got any of that, if I'm off base in any way there.
No, I do think that board meeting is October 7th.
7th.
Kara, go ahead, Kara.
So I welcome as much feedback as possible, especially if we didn't have, enough eyes on it. I guess a question, and this would be another process question, is if they gave the presentation and it was recorded, and then we on our own set up separate feedback groups using the public presentation, would we be able to do something like that as well, in case we don't get a sufficient turnout at the next board meeting?
Absolutely.
Because
In
if
fact,
Sean knows, I made some suggestions about some Yukon folks that weren't engaged that I think would give us some good feedback. It may also allow Prabhas to, I'm putting you on the spot, but to maybe tap into some more students, and maybe we're almost leveraging their presentation to do more focus group type activity. And I'm saying this hoping that it would be helpful, but not really knowing if it would or wouldn't. It would just be another way to also get a broader audience feedback.
the short answer is yes. The longer answer is that Kathleen actually raised the same point about its ability to record, and then the conversation turned into more the semantics of it. How long would we let it soak on the street, and how would we get additional input beyond those that might just not be able to make the date or the time of the presentation? So yes, we just need to figure out how the vehicle in which to do that, and then what to do with it and for how long after that date. But yes, some of the, in looking at the stakeholder group, there didn't seem to be enough residents or not and non-residents. I even raised some question on whether enough town staff were involved or town committees. Town planning wasn't on the list, for instance. I mentioned Yukon leadership and more student involvement beyond Prabhas's group, maybe even USG. So you're hitting on a lot of the things that we talked about, Kara.
We also talked, Sean, I think we talked about whether the board, I think you mentioned whether the board would meet after this public presentation, and then a question on if there were some issues that might need to be addressed in executive session. So that's something I would need to follow up to see if it would qualify for executive session.
Any other questions?
Well, I would like to just add that beyond the stakeholder engagement concern, they're doing a great job. They've got a lot of things covered. I felt good overall with the presentation. I think there's a lot of meat there. I did caution them a little bit towards the end to be a bit more assertive on their findings, to kind of steer the conversation in a way that we're getting the type of input that would be most valuable to pushing their process forward, and not kind of leave it in limbo or confuse it in any way. So I think in the aggregate, we should expect to see a presentation that covers a lot of issues, and in the end is on balance with leaving questions, but also starting to steer the conversation in a way that might be a solution. The next phase of their work is strategies, I think, is the best way to, right, Cynthia, is the best way to summarize it. So this is really just a checkpoint to make sure that they're heading in the right direction, and what they saw and heard is that there's consensus built around that.
And I apologize if you touched on this already, but are they comfortable with the feedback they received from the property owners?
think so. Cynthia, I'll let you comment on that, but I think so.
Well, I guess sort of logistically, I don't know if they followed up again, but they have not spoken to Katie at the Oaks and Mike Taylor. And I really encourage them to do that. And I think I'm going to do that again, Kyle and Sean, to encourage that. I don't know if Mike's in town, but I think those are important conversations. I mean, I think they got sort of the feedback from, you know, the sort of the store center, newer part of downtown stores, that people were willing to work with us. So to be determined, I guess. But, you know, we've already started that dialogue, you know, through Kyle, I think your leadership, having them at the board. We were due to have both those teams back to the board meeting in the fall anyway. So I think there's some positive energy there, but it's going to require consistent or more persistent communication, probably on behalf of the partnership board and partnership staff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little, again, I still, just for the record, I continue to be frustrated by it's like a hamster on a wheel. I just feel like we're just in circles with the biggest piece of this. I mean, Street Sense is working incredibly hard. This is real money that's being spent. This is an incredible amount of time that you, Sean, and Cynthia, and a lot of folks have spent on this. And you know, and I was over at Dog Lane today for lunch, and you'd be like, it's easier to count the number of vacancies than it is the number of occupied spaces. And it's frustrating, you know, as we're approaching the students coming back to campus, and hopefully, you know, I don't know. As I said, I would hope that there would be a more robust level of engagement from those folks, and so we keep trying. And yeah, I mean, that's all you can do.
We'll certainly make sure that they're they're targeted for the presentation, and we'll keep beating that drum best we can.
I do think one thing that Larissa mentioned is that, you know, one of the property owners, I think, has worked with the Street Sense team in general. So I think that resonated with him. There's respect that he has for Street Sense. So I feel good about that conversation. So, you know, I think that will help a lot.
Did you just knock on wood?
No, I just felt like, I thought somebody was, I don't know, somebody was calling. No.
Well, unintentionally knocked on wood.
It worked. It
So,
counts.
so we may have to, I mean, one question that I'd said a second question I said I would ask in this meeting is just kind of gauge our comfort level with showing it to the public, perhaps before we have an opportunity to comment on it ourselves. And that plays into the logistics and semantics and the type of meeting it is. I think that I mean, I'm personally okay with it either way, but it wouldn't be my decision to make. So I thought I'd bring it up here, or said I'd bring it up here to see if the best scenario in terms of logistics and semantics is to have a public presentation before the board sees it for the first time. Are we comfortable doing that? Or would you want to, maybe we could, Cynthia, is it permissible for a PDF to be distributed as a preview copy to board members in advance of a public presentation as a draft?
Yeah, I think if it's shown as a draft, we can do that. So
Maybe
that's an option too.
What do we think
I
about
feel
that?
like I can go both ways with that. I also think that it would require a little bit of an introduction before the presentation so that the ground rules are set about what the goals were, and so that we're not in some like debate over, well, that actually wasn't part of the scope of the, you know, if someone asks a question or something like that. Um,
Yeah, no, I understand.
I could go either way, so curious what other people think.
We're trying to be sensitive, what's embedded in this question is also trying to be sensitive to how their work was scoped out. So they owe us one presentation, and we're trying to avoid an additional service here by having one more presentation, but we certainly have the ability to do that if that's most comfortable to us, is to throw a little extra money at it.
I think I guess my thought, Sean, is that, we as a board, this has to be a plan that we have the capability, number one, that we are comfortable supporting and that we have the capability of executing. And if it's presented publicly and as the first time that we see it, and perhaps we don't have that comfort level, it puts us in a little bit of a tricky spot. That's all. That would be my only thought. Not to say, put this in, take this out, revise this. It's more just to have an answer publicly. So, if we preview it and then can say, you know what, as a board, yes, this is included in this, but maybe this isn't going to be a priority because we as a board don't know that this really would be our priority right now relative to it, and focus on different areas of it. That's
Well, maybe the answer somewhere in between, and I welcome other comments. If we were able to, we gave them a date to get a draft preview material out, and then we time that in the way that we have maybe a governance committee meeting between that issuance and the public presentation. Maybe we can use invite them to the governance committee meeting to answer any questions that either that committee can kind of be the conduit back to them on. In other words, get it out in time so that there's time to meet in committee, to be a vehicle for comments that any board members may have, just to try to put some structure around it so that several of us aren't, sending Cynthia a bunch of stuff and then she's got to feed it to the consultants and get back to us.
I mean, logistically, Noor said she could have the comments in the next week. We do have a governance committee meeting on the 23rd of August.
When do we meet in September, Cynthia?
The governance committee meets,
27th.
yeah,
September.
and then the board.
27th
We
of
don't have
September,
to
Craig?
public thing on October 7th either. We kind of talked about that with Larissa and Noor. That's when our board meeting is. I mean, 4:30 might be too early for a public presentation anyway, but.
Right, so if we take the dates out of the equation, it sounds like there's not any opposition to previewing a draft. And so the question then becomes, how do we receive comments and questions on that draft, and what's a reasonable time between that moment and them making any necessary revisions before it went to public presentation?
And I can take comments if we do it through email, but the board cannot have a discussion over email without it being a public board meeting.
Yeah, and that's where I thought maybe the governance committee could come in handy, because that's a public meeting, right?
Guess I'd rather do it sooner rather than later. If we could hit the August meeting, that would be preferred.
So they did say that Cynthia just mentioned the revisions based on today's discussion, they should have next week. So we could then issue it right out to the board and ask for questions and comments before governance on the 27th. It's tight. I mean, what's today? The 5th? So, well, actually, that would be almost 2 weeks of having it in hand. We're meeting on, governance is meeting on a Friday?
No, it's the 23rd.
Oh,
23rd in
23rd.
August, 27th in September. So
So maybe
I'd
it's,
prefer to hit the August would be ideal, just to give us more lead time.
would everyone be okay with having it for as little as 10 days, 7 to 10 days? Okay.
So I'm out next week, Sean. Do you want this to come to Kathleen or Denise then if Noor has it done?
Sure.
I mean, I have time to do the governance agenda, but I wouldn't be able to get the actual PowerPoint until the 16th.
Yeah, just if you could relay to Larissa and Noor that to put the change the date on the document to the date that they're issuing it to us, and to make sure the word draft is nice, big and bold on every sheet.
Yep.
Or draft for review or something like that, whatever they would typically do. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, so anything else on that?
Just a question. So on that review in the governance committee, are you seeking a collection of comment to be funneled back to you, Sean?
Yeah, well, Cynthia and I will have to figure out logistically how to do it.
Okay.
Because the one thing I'm uncertain of is whether or not Street Sense would be willing to attend that meeting and field the question, deal with the questions and comments directly. And if that's the case, and depending on who we get comments from, it might actually be from governance committee members, and not necessarily anything for me to be a conduit of. So if we could just table that for now, Frank, and Cynthia and I might need to figure out the best way to do it once we see if Street Sense can attend, and to see what comments, questions we get and from who.
Not to belabor this, but we could add it to 2 agendas, right? Introduced in August, and then if they can't, if that's time's not available to them, possibly joining the September meeting, we could add it to that agenda as well as an option.
So, Sean, not to, I mean, I know we want the governance committee to be the conduit, but if you want sort of full discussion, does it make sense to just do it at the September 2nd board meeting?
Oh, yeah, I forgot it. We have that meeting?
Unless people are out. I mean, it's before Labor Day. I don't know if that works for them, but we do have a board meeting on September 2nd.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, as long as, they're not going to come present anything, but they might be available by phone for that instead. Sure.
It's just then you sort of, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought the September 2nd meeting wasn't happening. Maybe it was this one that might not have been happening, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And those are 2 options.
No, I think that's
you and
a much
Frank, if
better
you want-
option.
and-
Yeah, thank you, Cynthia. That's a much better option.
Okay. So do you want me to see if they can be there to answer questions? Okay.
And they'll get it to us 2 weeks before that?
Yep.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so we're good on that. Thank you, Sean and Cynthia. And so we will now turn back to Cynthia for the executive director report. Cynthia.
Okay, can I just finish something real quick? Thanks.
Oh, wait, we need to hire you an intern note taker.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion that we should have at some.
Are you on your 3rd notebook this week, or? Probably.
Yeah, probably, no. just a couple of things. I'm going to be sending you all either after this meeting tomorrow morning. We do need to solicit board members to staff the partnership table at the festival. So we usually have a team of 2. So it would be 2 to 4 and then 4 to 6. So I'll send out a sign up sheet, and then Emily will talk more about the festival later, but I just wanted to mention that to everybody. You got a nice update from Kathleen, a lot going on that she and Denise are involved with over the next 3 days. So we have Patty Tuitt at 6:30 tonight out on Betsy Patterson Square. Tomorrow night is our first movie, so Raya and the Last Dragon. Starts at 7:30, different crafts and fun events, and then the movie starts at dusk. And we are still looking, I believe Denise is still looking for someone to help out at Frozen 2, which is August 13th. So if anybody has time to help with that, if they could let Denise know. Then we have the last outdoor puppetry performance on Saturday at 11, the Wonder Spark Puppets presenting Fox Fables, I think, right, Emily? And I would mention that, as some of you may know, so Kathleen is trying to program the concerts for every Thursday this month. So after a lot of back and forth, we were able to keep the Nature's Medicines $5,000 that they gave us because they are transitioning out of the ownership of that facility here in Mansfield. So we have that money, and Kathleen is doing a great job at trying to secure some bands over this month. So, and then just some openings and closings. So the owner of Dave's Deli, Dave, has sold the business in University Plaza. There will be, according to Manny Hadas, the owner of University Plaza with his family, be a new business coming in there. You probably saw Fresh Fort Cafe is now open upstairs. I went there yesterday, got a nice lunch for today. So I would encourage people to check them out. Manny's been doing a great job of conveying to the owner what the partnership does. I went over, the owner had just left, but I went over and dropped off a packet on the partnership, trying to get them to participate in the festival and hopefully do a grand opening or ribbon cutting for them. I think I did tell you all some time ago about Brooklyn Dumplings coming into the former farmhouse space. If you saw that dumpster that was there, that thing is gone now. So I drove in Tuesday. I'm like, no. They'd already been working on it, but the dumpster with all the mattresses, that's gone. So I did peek in, and it is cleared out. So it's pretty much a shell in there now. So I don't know the latest on timing, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, they'll get started. Let's see, I think that was it on an executive director report, unless anybody has any questions.
Sean?
And I see Ryan's on the line. He might have some information on this. Has there been any conversation about, or any requests from the businesses for additional outdoor space for the fall? Like in parallel parking spaces or on sidewalks or anything like that? And I'm thinking back to Prabhas's presentation about University Plaza and opportunities there. Should we expect to see any more outdoor dining than what's there today?
I can report only that this comes up from time to time in staff discussions. I'm not aware of any businesses that are inquiring, but it's possible there are conversations happening that I'm not aware of. So Sean, I'd have to ask around.
So I haven't heard anything yet, Sean. I know, there was the whole discussion, I think last summer or fall about, whether we could do something on the square, but then the partnership would have had to manage that. And then the whole issue of potentially closing that dog lane section, which I think a lot of the board members and others are in support of. I think that's something which is a good reminder that we should bring up with Larissa and Noor in terms of the public space discussion, because I know Steve's in favor of it. And I know a lot of other folks are in favor of doing that to kind of open that area up to a larger public space. But the short answer is I've not heard from anybody directly. I mean, that's something I could, Mike has some tables and chairs out there. Manny doesn't have anything. So I could ask Manny if he's, if any of his restaurants in there are interested. I don't know if he wants to give up whatever space or the safety piece. I mean, I think you can work around that a bit with barricades and things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, that's definitely not trying to create any to-do items here. I was just curious if there was any momentum building with the businesses for, thinking ahead and, at least doing some scenario-based planning if situations get worse with the pandemic and not having to react very quickly before the whole fall season is done. So if we're not getting those requests already via the town or the partnership, but I don't know, maybe that's an encouraging sign.
Yeah, the good thing is Linda has she had set up a really good system to apply for, to do that, which, several folks did, Coyote, Flacco. And so that we do have a good system in place to do that if that does, if somebody requests.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Cynthia? Great, thank you, Cynthia. We're now going to jump to an update and follow up from Prabhas on the work of the UConn Student Consulting Group. Prabhas?
Thank you, Kyle. So just a quick update on following up on the project that my group was able to complete this past spring semester. One of the things we had mentioned was rerunning the student survey. So during, the pandemic, we were able to survey about 700 UConn students here at Storrs just to get their thoughts and their attitudes towards the downtown during the pandemic and also prior to the pandemic. So thinking about like a timeline, we wanted to rerun the survey just to capture students' opinions and changes in attitudes post-COVID. With the original thought of running it in the fall, but given, we're doing this meeting virtually and, there's a lot up in the air around stuff like this. So the thought that I've had is to, run this survey at the start of the spring semester, maybe right at the start or maybe a little bit into the spring semester so that people are comfortable and back in school. And then at that point, it would be just about exactly 1 year since we ran this survey this past spring. And I think that would give us a really good glimpse into the pre, during, and post-pandemic behavior of students. So that's just the update I wanted to provide anyone. I'm happy to take any questions now or as they come up.
Sean?
Hey, Prabhas. I touched on it a little bit earlier on the strategic plan, but just so you know, they said something along the lines of when we asked about student involvement, they said something along the lines of, well, we had Prabhas's group's work and we read that really well, and that was all they really planned on doing for student engagement. So that led the conversation to, that's a great group and they did great work and they captured, I didn't quantify it, but that 700 students. I just caution them that shouldn't be the be all end all of student engagement, that we should still get USG perhaps commentary on the plan, or at least invite them to come to the presentation, something that captures has a broader net. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. They might get different input, of course, from other students than what you provided, but just so you know, they are going to solicit other students' input.
Yeah, I actually encourage that. I think USG has they're a student government. They have a pretty wide net. They have a lot of different committees. So honestly, the more the better. Our project was just to capture as much as we could in that current moment. But things have changed, and I'm sure the outlook that students have, including myself, to this fall and this upcoming semester is different than when we were in the dead middle of the pandemic. Not sure what the end date would be. So the more feedback, the better.
Anything else for Prabhas? Fantastic. Thanks, Prabhas. Move on to reports from committees. I will start with you, Emily. Celebrate Mansfield Festival.
Sure. We are less than a month away from, 2 months away from Celebrate Mansfield. I just scared Cynthia. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Just making sure you know the date. Okay, sorry, October 2nd, not September. So we have been meeting regularly. Denise has been working really hard. She's been putting in a ton of effort, and she just sent me the most recent numbers to share with everyone. So we currently have 41 booths, including 27 activity booths who have expressed interest, and that number is increasing daily. 20 are confirmed. 6 sponsor booths, 7 craft booth applications, and there are some food booths, including Yukon Food for Thought truck, which is confirmed for 2 to 5 p.m., and other food booths are being confirmed. Dairy bar truck just confirmed today, which is good in my book. The vaccine clinic, they want the Eastern Highlands Health District will offer a free COVID and flu vaccines at an expanded booth setup. So it'll be 2 tents that are 20 feet by 20 feet. So that's kind of where we are with the booths, but she really stressed that activity booths applications are coming in every day. For fundraising, we're on track to meet the budgetary needs with committed funds. And we're also this year going to try a small donor virtual campaign, so crowdfunding if we can. So more details will be coming soon. We're just trying to figure out the logistics for that. But we're hoping that, with kind of the focus on Celebrate Mansfield being on local acts, that maybe we can really encourage community members to make small donations that will help us meet our budgetary needs. For entertainment, the headlining band is confirmed for the event. Follow online for the band announcement coming soon. Their opening acts are being finalized. And then the Ballard Institute is hoping to host an in-person pageant again. We were going to collaborate with Joshua's Trust to do a pageant focused on local species. We are just waiting to get approval from Yukon and the Provost's office with our COVID safety plan. But hopefully we'll be able to do that in person and have a workshop. The children's entertainment will have a Kids Zone. Magician Pete Haddad will return this year. We will have an interactive play area that's being finalized on Wilbercross Way. Johnny Walker just confirmed. And then I think Sarah had a really great idea of asking Mansfield Public School gym teachers to set up some fun activities, and they have been approached. So we're hoping to confirm that as we get closer to the fall. We will also have music performances for children and families held on the corner of Wilbercross Way. For street entertainment, there are going to be 2 street spots for music for a cappella choirs at the end of Dog Lane and also on Wilbercross Way Courtyard. I'm working with Denise to see if we can get a couple puppetry students to do short performances, or we have one student who has a large parading puppet. We thought it would be fun if they walk around and kind of interact with people with that large scale oversized puppet. And then Eastern Insurance Associates will be bringing a stilt walker performer from 2 to 4 p.m. So things are starting to come together. And like I said, Denise is doing a really great job. We have a couple different site plans laid out right now, but all based on full capacity. So that's kind of the summary of where things are for now for the Celebrate Mansfield Festival that is taking place October 2nd, not September. Kara.
More of a comment, and I preface this with I haven't spoken to Ryan or Cynthia about what I'm about to say because it's related to the 4-town initiative that we're on the committee for. And Cynthia missed our last meeting and Ryan actually had to drop off. So But part of what we've been talking about with the Four Town Initiative is ways in which we can cross collaborate or market each other's initiatives. And I kind of floated the idea of like, would we ever show up at each other's events, right? So, and if for those that may not remember, the Four Town Initiative is Bolton, Tolland, Mansfield, and Coventry. So Coventry Farmers Market, obviously most people know that. This is really the big Mansfield event that if we were going to show up at each other's towns, you know, this would be an initiative. I don't know what Tolland or Bolton, if they have any big initiatives, but what are people, would we ever, as kind of a reciprocal, you know, reach out to the neighborhood, invite them or comp them on having a table or something? We're just looking for ways to kind of help each other out and show visibility about the work that our committee is doing as well. And it just so happens that I probably can't volunteer that weekend. So I'm also bringing this up and not being able to staff the table that of the Four Town Initiative. But I don't know. If it doesn't fit in, that's fine too. But we are trying to collaborate on things. So I don't know. What are Cynthia or Ryan or anybody's thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of love the idea. I think, especially because I feel like we're trying to focus on the local and celebrate our community. I think why not promote each other? But there might be, you know, things that I'm not thinking of.
So Kara, just to so I can understand, because there's some work going on with the calendar subcommittee that I may or may not have updated the full group back in July, but are you talking about the Four Town groups having a table at the festival and at these other events, or just sort of saying, here's the Celebrate Mansfield Festival, here's the Celebrate Tolland, because they do have a similar event in Tolland, here's the Coventry Farmers Market, please go to those, because that's what the calendar committee was talking about before we actually get a regional calendar.
I think it's both. I'm not sure our group is ready to show up at each other's festivals yet, right? Because we don't have collateral. We don't even know what we're calling each other. But it's also lost, you know, to wait another year is also a lost opportunity. Maybe it is just baby steps we just cross promote at this point. We don't actually physically go anywhere.
And that subcommittee has a meeting on the 19th. So we've already talked about doing that. So it's a matter of just implementing it. So I'm thinking we're sort of on this parallel track with what you're suggesting, Kara, I hope. I think so.
I was just going to offer, and Kara, actually, you know, you just, I guess, touched on my thought on this as well. I think we want to get to the point where we, you know, very much are promoting each other's stuff, and then it's more about the whole rising tide lifts all boats. I'm just not sure that we're organized enough. Like you said, you know, we don't even have a name really for what we are. I'm not really sure what that physical presence would look like, or, you know, precisely what the message would be. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we should just, you know, kind of force ourselves to jump off somewhere and kind of force ourselves to swim.
And actually, to tell you the truth, the committee, no one really commented on the idea of it. So I'm probably also advancing in an initiative that no one really either said yet, but it was at the end of the meeting too. So
Well, I think
anyway, just table it for another time, I think.
I think at the very least we can do the cross promotion that, because I did talk to Eric today to get caught up, and they don't have any events right now, but they have the big winter event that they do in the Coventry Village. So, you know, if we sort of start as a pilot, you know, promoting a specific event. So for instance, the festival, we do some more outreach to the 3 other towns than what we would normally do, that kind of thing, if that seems appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to leverage whatever we can to get people at everyone's events.
Right, and work with the social media, with each other's social media. I think we can pull something off.
Great. Anybody else, anything on the festival? Emily? Okay. Cynthia says there are no reports from the executive or the finance and growth. So Frank, we'll turn it over to you for governance update.
Thanks, Kyle. I have to follow a very exciting report. Governance can be pretty exciting too. In fact, we had our meeting was on July 19th, and we've had a practice where we interview outgoing board members and had a very good discussion. I'm very grateful for the input that Diana provided. She's the first president we've had who was not a founding member of the partnership. So actually brought some very helpful perspective to it. We talked a little bit about this transition period of not only going to remote work, responding to COVID, but also launching a strategic planning activity during her years as president. So there was a lot of good discussion and also some suggestions of where we might take into consideration some review of our bylaws just to confirm consistency with what we have, with what the actual practice is, and make sure that we're up to snuff. It's a natural time to do it with the strategic planning process. So we also had a review of strategic planning. Sean's already provided that similar update to the board earlier today. And then our group did review, sort of start looking at the calendar, thinking about our agenda items for the upcoming year, how it aligns with our goals, as well as how our board members, our composition of our board, and when people rotate off, just to make sure that we're all in sync and have a good pipeline of potential board members to be thinking about, and for special slots that we have that will be upcoming. So it was a good time. Thanks, Kyle.
Anybody with anything for Frank? I mean, if you had snacks and drinks, it sounds like that'd be a meeting I'd want to come to. I mean,
you just have to come, you'll find out.
I mean, you're selling it pretty good. I mean, Denise runs a hell of a festival meeting, I have to say that. So, so you've got, you've got competition. There's no doubt about it. Anybody with anything for Frank? Any questions? Fantastic. Upcoming agenda items. Cynthia said that I can ignore this. She said she should have taken it off the agenda, but it's just been living there. There's always something to talk about regarding parking if anybody wants to. Does anybody have anything they want to? Good. Excellent. We'll move on. You should have seen in the packet the correspondence and communications. And there's always a lot of good stuff in there. So does anyone have anything else that they feel we need to cover? Any questions, any concerns? Everybody's hungry. It's been a long day. Some of us have to drive home 40 minutes. Fantastic. Okay, well, then I guess we will wrap. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Can I have a second? Pravas, okay. All in favor? I'm assuming no one's going to be against. Great. All right. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. My first meeting, I made it through. I didn't even have to go once to the book. I had the book. So I actually
How
have,
many pages is that book?
I actually have
need it.
I have two of them. So they're both pretty thick. So I relied on my old Little League president days to run a board meeting, and we didn't even get in an argument about who was batting third or playing short or pitching. So it was perfect. Great. All right. Everybody have a great night. We'll
See
talk.
ya.
All right,
Bye,
thanks.
everybody.